Hi, I'm Jymi Cliché. I'm the author of the Godchild books. That's a trilogy, and this is the first book in the trilogy, The Godchild. I I designed the cover, um, and then here's the back. I self-published this on Amazon about a year ago. Right now, I have an art show going on at the Armory in Somerville. It's open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And it's in the basement of the Armory. If you go down to the basement, it's in a hallway, and if you walk into the hall, the light will turn on, and my stuff is down there. Right now, I have 25 photographs, and I'll have 25 drawings in June that were all done mostly in psych wards when I was struggling with my mental health. And this book, The Godchild, is about my struggles with mental illness, and the whole trilogy is, but it's sort of based on this theme of something that I've struggled with my psychosis, and certain like thoughts and delusions and things that I've had and feelings. I mean, I don't know, people say they're delusions, but I think we all see the world a different way. I mean, any religion is a delusion, and it's nothing is exactly what we believe it to be, because we only know so much, and no one can really know everything. So, but based on what I know and what I see, this is how I feel about the world and my place in it as like Godchild, what this book is about. And so anyway, I thought that I would read a chapter from the Godchild. It's probably my favorite chapter. It might be kind of, it's one of the most interesting chapter. I mean, well, no, there's a lot of interesting chapters in here, but I think this is one that kind of stands out. So I wanted to share it. My new books that I'm coming out with, I just wrote a memoir that I'm trying to put out soon, called I Write the System to Fight the System So I Might Write the System. And that's a memoir, kind of an autobiography, but it's also about the system and my experience in it. And then there's also, I'm coming out with a children's book that I also wrote and illustrated. So those are coming up soon. I wrote this book, this Godchild, the first one, I wrote almost a decade ago. And so my writing has grown, and I've grown, and my visions of things are different now. But this is, where when I wrote this about, 8 or 9 years ago, or I guess it was it was in 2013 that I wrote this. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. I've changed a little bit, but this is the story of so when I had this psychosis, this mental health breakdown, basically it was my second breakdown, but my first one was a very negative, angry one. This one was a very spiritual, happy one. And I swam to an island, and this is the story of that. So and it was an island in Spy Pond, in Arlington. So this chapter 35 is called Spy Ponders, and it was written on 11/3/2013 at 11:13 p.m. I'm going to tell the story of my first trip to the island now. I've alluded to it, but let me tell you the full story. I think it's pretty mind-blowing. I know it still shakes me to this day. I think it happened right after I told Dr. Snap about what happened in the woods with the cop. I mentioned how she tried to get me to take an antipsychotic med again, and I refused because I wanted to be able to see certain things more clearly, but I agreed to take a small amount of Klonopin for anxiety from the paranoia. I'm very careful with Klonopin because I know it can be addictive. I was only taking half a pill every few days at the lowest dose there is, but it still helped in intense moments. I was feeling great from the mania and the good karma that have coming my way. I woke up on this random day and went to the craft store to buy some paint and canvas. I carried it all down to the park by Spy Pond with my camera, a cigar, and a Klonopin. I smoked some weed before I left and put sunscreen on to mask the smell. Sunscreen is one of the best ways to cover up the smell of weed in the summer. It was only mid-April, but it was a late spring, early summer day. I had on swim shorts and an old t-shirt that I could wipe my paint on. I walked down the hill towards the park and felt an overwhelming feeling that I belonged there that day, like it was part of the plan for something bigger. I walked past the people on the sidewalk who were hanging out in their yard, and I heard someone say, "Today's the day," and another person responded with, "And he doesn't even know what's about to happen." I felt certain that they were talking about me, but their conversation went on to discuss a couple getting engaged or something like that. Still, the way I look at the world, the more I think those words really were meant for me. It didn't matter if the people who spoke the words meant them for me or not. I was right there. This is the day I realized that we're all bigger puppet masters of the universe than we think we are. We're weaving together a symphony, all to tell the greatest story ever told, the true story of life and how it came to be. As I walked down the hill towards the park, I knew in my gut that the universe meant for that sentence to reach me, and that this was my day. Today was the day, but I didn't even know it yet, just as they said. All I knew was to go with my gut. My brain was giving me millions of ideas of what that fateful day would be. I kind of thought I'd die, but I was in this good mood and it was a beautiful day, so I was able to let go of the fear and trust my gut. That's what I kept reminding myself through the whole thing. It was what Marlene told me to do that fateful day I ended up at her house. She said to trust my gut, and I did. My gut knew that I was supposed to be there that day, and that I wanted to paint at the park and enjoy the beautiful weather, so that was exactly what I was gonna do. When I got there, it was crowded. Some days that would turn me away, but not on this day. People were sitting on benches. A couple guys were playing guitar. People were just hanging out and having picnics. There were two fathers, each with several sons, and they were fishing together in the pond, looking like they were from another place and time. I wondered if they were real. One family was black, the other white. I recognized the black man and his family from the previous summer when when I used to swim in the pond while they fished. They seemed a little unreal back then too, now that I thought about it. The father smoked a straw tobacco pipe and was wearing overalls with no shirt. He had on a fishing hat with a tackle attached. It's not something you see every day in this area. Plus, him and his family just seemed magic. There's a baseball field next to the pond where the two families were fishing. The bleachers were completely filled with families watching their sons play Little League. I tried to find a spot on the grass at the park where I didn't get in the way. I wanted to be somewhere I could look at the water while I listened to the game and set up my art. I don't have an easel and a chair like a professional. I just put the canvas on the ground and set up on the ground to finger paint. No one looked at me like I was weird. Most days I'd feel self-conscious to set up space among others like that, but that day I felt comfortable with the people and they felt the same towards me. I even heard one mother tell her daughter, "Look at that cool art that guy is making." She meant me. I was shocked. I usually feel like people see me as a plague. I sat and painted an abstract painting. It was colorful and typical of my style. Then, on a large piece of canvas, I drew a frame with a little cartoon picture of myself in the corner, sitting with my legs crossed. I was starting to zone out of my art. I got kind of into watching the game, which was nearing the end. There was one kid who I thought of as the Beetle of this team because of his personality. I had just met Beetle a few years before that, and he was the most hyperactive person I'd ever met. This annoying little kid reminded me of him, with his strong Boston accent and his extreme hyperactivity. He was cheering for the batter, chanting, "Maki, Maki, Maki." He was saying it in such a rhythm, it started to hurt my brain, to the point where I heard my voice inside my head scream, "Shut up, kid!" And just like that, after I said those magic words inside my head, the world started spinning. I felt like the world was a ride I was on, a big spinning ball like it is, but I could feel it spinning. It spun, and then it eventually settled back, and no one seemed affected but me. There was also a feeling of intense deja vu. Deja vu is kind of intense to begin with, but it was 100 times that. I had a clear vision that I'd been through this moment before, and that I'd experience it all again someday. It felt like, in some other past life, we all prepared for this moment. It made me think about fate and how we're all puppets to the big show in the sky. The plan of the universe was that the kid would chant Maki in an annoying rhythm, and it would trigger me to remember that it was my day. Something huge was going to happen. In my head, I was kind of convinced I was going to die. I didn't know how, but I thought it might be murder. I accepted it, though. It was part of the plan that God had for me, and I couldn't leave the park until it happened. As my deja vu was still going on that beautiful day, the game ended, and people started to take off. Some of the kids did cartwheels in front of me to show off. They reminded me of myself and my cousin Madeline as kids. The girl doing a cartwheel dropped a nickel out of her pocket and never picked it up. I kept thinking that someone at the park was going to kill me in front of everyone, but the baseball families were soon gone, as were the people there for the sun. There was still one guy with a guitar and the two fishing families. I went towards the fishing guys to light up my cigar, since I saw the black man puffing on his pipe. I asked them if they caught anything, and they said not much. I asked him if he remembered me from the previous summer when I used to swim there. I used to swim out about a third of the way to the island and back, but never any further. He said he remembered, and he asked, "Are you going to swim tonight?" It was a warm day, and the sun was just starting to go down, and it was only April. I told him, "I don't think I'll be going in tonight, no." I honestly hadn't planned on it, and I didn't think I would at that point. As more time went by and I was finishing my cigar, 3 older women out for a sunset walk approached the water. I was starting to have to pee. The women triggered my anxiety right away. They reminded me of my dead grandmother Stormy and her 2 best friends. One of her best friends, Dove, is still alive and is like a grandmother to me. In the time since the godmother vision a couple years before that, I started to think that the 3 of them were involved somehow, like they were the godmothers themselves. When I saw these 3 women by the water, I started to think of them as the 3 Eves, which was based on something someone had recently told me. There was a theory that everyone on Earth can trace themselves back to one of 3 original women, aka Eves. I felt like the 3 Eves were a weird magical trio that took on many human forms, and that these 3 women were there to watch me through eternity. I recognized them as part of my destiny. Maybe my Grammy, Dove, and their other friend were the 3 Eves and the 3 godmothers, something like that. I also have a few older women as friends I met online from Australia in the early 2000s, and one of them has the same name as my Grammy, first and last name. I think of the women in Australia as my internet grandmothers, and as another version of the 3 Eves, joined with another mutual friend from California. They are everywhere. I asked one of the kids who were fishing if they'd seen the shark on the pond. There was obviously no shark in the pond, but I like to mess with kids' imagination a little. The Eves didn't look happy about me asking that question. They thought I was going to scare them, but the kids got really excited about it, and their imaginations went wild as they talked about catching the shark with their fishing hooks. The Eves' faces changed from judging me, and now they each had a bit of a smile. They realized I was just being playful. I used to do stuff like that all the time with my little cousins and my sister Natalie, although Natalie later resented me for all the things she used to believe because of me. She was embarrassed for having believed in things I told her, like when she asked why my friend Monty was eating our houseplants one time. I told her he was a bug and that our other friend kissed him and turned him into Monty, the bass player for their band. I also told her that the cement barriers on the highway were for skateboarders to get out of their cars and skate during traffic. There was some truth to what I was saying. Monty and my other friend were in a band together, and Monty played bass. I don't know why he was eating our plant, but he did start a band called Bug Boy not long after that. And while the cement stuff on the highway may not have been put there for skateboarders, on my way to Lollapalooza 94, we were in so much traffic that the people I was with got out of their car and skated on the highway. I just stretched the truth for fun. I think my sister was also hurt because while I was telling her all the wild tales I did, I was suicidal and made a few attempts when she was very young. I was the one she looked up to the most, and I let her down over and over until she hated me. I was never going to see those kids at the park again, though, so I doubt I did much harm by telling them about the shark. If anything, it would keep them out of the water, which was not really supposed to be swam in, but obviously I do sometimes. I got the idea about the shark months earlier. Brett and I had gone to the pond one night after he took a bag of shrooms. I'd never been with anyone while they tripped, but when I was a teenager, my cousin Julie used to tell me about when her and her friends took hallucinogens. They'd play with each other's minds, pretending to throw them a ball or saying that they had a magic wand in their hand. The person tripping would start to see it. So when Brett and I went down to the pond when he was tripping, I told him I saw a shark. We spent the night looking for the shark, and Brett kept claiming he saw it. I even started to see it too, even though I was sober. It was one of my better moments with Brett, one of the good times I missed. I thought it would be fun to share a piece of that with the kids who have their natural imagination and no need for psychedelics. Maybe it's not good to lie to kids at all, but it seems like kids enjoy a tall tale sometimes, like Santa. As the sun set, the water got more and more still. It was still to the point where the reflection on the water was like a mirror image, and if you looked right into it, the trees and the houses on the other side of the pond and their reflection could start to look like a 3D planet in the sky. You can even capture it with a camera, which I have. I've often thought to myself that it would be cool to jump into the water when the water looked like the sky. It would be like jumping off the earth if there was no gravity. I never did it because I was usually fully dressed, or it was too cold, or I was scared. This night was different. I was meant to be in the park. I felt it. I knew I couldn't go home yet, and I had to pee so badly, and there was nowhere for me to go on the land, especially with kids around. As my bladder was just about to burst, I picked up the nickel the little girl dropped on earlier and put it in my pocket, like it was symbolic of an anchor. And then I jumped into the water, like I was jumping into the sky. It was surprisingly warm for that early in the spring. I swam out a ways and peed in the water. It felt so good. As the pee was coming out, it felt like the pee itself were the cause of the intense deja vu I was feeling. It all emptied out of me, and I was feeling calm but confused by what to do next. Everyone eventually left the park while I was still in the water. I think I saw the three Eves take flash photos of me in the sunset, but then they were gone, and I realized that no one was going to kill me. What did it all mean? What was this weird day? I had no answer yet, and I didn't want to get out of the water either. I started to wonder if I was going to drown, but the more I swam, the more I started to think that if I were to drown, I'd have to drown myself on purpose. I had a giant brain fart. That took me out of my head and the morbid space. I realized the last thing I wanted to do was drown myself. So instead of doing something stupid like that, why shouldn't I just swim out to the island like I always wanted? My gut said do it. I didn't question it. Most days I'd talk myself out of something like that, reminding myself that the sunset was nearly over and it was going to be dark soon. I would have normally thought I might be scared on an island alone in the dark, but I wasn't scared this day. Fear was not on the plate, not even healthy fear. I swam to the island. It didn't feel like it took that long. I took it slow and made sure not to get out of breath. When I got close to the island, I could hear Mother Goose barking and her babies barking behind her. She was not okay with me coming out to the island where she was protecting her family. I tried to show my respect to the goose and let her know through my body language that I wasn't there to hurt her or her babies, but she was barking up a storm. I found myself walking in the shallow water around the side so not as to come at the geese, but the mother goose was still scared. I wasn't, though. I got up onto the island and was pleasantly surprised at how soft it was on my feet. I expected more rocks and sticks, but I found a nice mossy area. I couldn't see anything very well. My eyes adjusted slightly over time, though, and the geese eventually calmed down as well. I sat down on the soft moss and thought about what I was going to do. I decided that I should at least spend the night there. I thought about spending 3 nights. I thought about the 3 eves, plus Easter had just passed. I thought about how Jesus was missing for 3 days after he was crucified and then came back to life. I started thinking maybe I was meant to hide there for 3 days and come back to life too. I noticed an animal on the island watching me and the geese. To me, it looked like maybe a coyote, much bigger than a raccoon, but maybe it was just a raccoon. When I saw it, I was officially scared, and so were the geese. I'm sure whatever it was had been after the geese babies already. Mother Goose was going crazy barking again. I told Mother Goose that if she calmed down, I'd spend the night protecting us all from whatever the animal was. I started gathering sticks, big enough to use in case I had to stab the large animal with it, like it were a sword. I started to practice stabbing trees. They were small, skinny trees. They were birch trees, as I'd later find out, but I could hardly see them in the dark. I danced around the trees. Each stab with the stick got them right on, like I was a professional samurai. I danced and stabbed trees for the rest of the night, always prepared to stab this animal if it came at me. But I ended up keeping it away, and the goose got some rest with her babies. She maybe even seemed grateful. I was tired, though. As the sun came up the next morning, I felt so incredibly warm. I was literally freezing before that. I'd spent an early April night outside soaking wet. I'd never eaten dinner, and I was up all night dancing and stabbing trees, so I was wiped the fuck out the next morning, and I decided it was safe to rest. I wasn't sure what I was going to do about getting back in such a weak state. Between seeing Mother Goose and the 3 eves, I thought about how Dove used to tell me the story of the boy who cried wolf. I became concerned that the world, my family, and my friends would all move on and forget about me, thinking I died from some crazy thing I did. I thought that they wouldn't even care because they came so close to losing me so many times. It made me sad. I was afraid I'd be left out there to die. I decided to rest and went to lie down on the softest spot I could find. I started to fall asleep a little when I heard sirens. The ringing was familiar. I looked at the land across from where I was from the island. There were 3 fire trucks and ambulances coming down 3 different roads towards the water, all at once in a triangle shape. Immediately, my deja vu came back, and I said to myself, "They come for me. Of course, I remember now. They come for me." I waited quietly on the island as they got in their boats and headed over. Someone found my stuff at the park early that morning, including my art with the frame around it, where I'd written along the edges, "I'm going to a better place, and the whole world will be forgiven." When I drew it, I was still thinking I was going to be murdered, but they thought it was a suicide note. When the firefighters found me, There were two of them in the boat. One of them was a real asshole, yelling at me, calling me names, telling me how much trouble I was in. The other one told him to shut the hell up, because I was clearly in some kind of crisis. He said how happy he was and how happy he felt to have found me alive, and they were going to take good care of me. The jerky one wasn't happy at all and wanted answers to his rude questions, but they put me in the back of an ambulance, and the nicer guy rode in the back with me over to the hospital. He gently asked me if I felt like I could tell him more about what happened. It was all so big to me at the time, and still really is. I felt sure that all of this was linked to everything that happened in 2008, and that someone was doing something to me like an experiment. I even felt like it was otherworldly somehow. I told the firefighter nicely, "I don't think you'd even believe me. It's such a crazy story." The firefighter took off his jacket and slid his shirt up his arm to show me a beautiful full-sleeve tattoo he had of the events of 9/11, with a lot of details, and I think it had some stuff about the Illuminati and aliens and stuff like that. He said to me simply, "You'd be surprised what I believe." Of course, since 9/11 is my birthday, and I predicted that exact date would be bad a decade in advance, I felt like he was trying to tell me something. Having him show me his tattoo in that moment was something I couldn't dismiss. I felt like he was saying, "I know what's going on, and I'm on your side." I know he was. The people at the ER who treated my hypothermia were convinced that I wasn't lying to them when I said I wasn't suicidal, but they asked me to stay at my parents' for a while anyway, and I did. I went back to my apartment a couple days later to get my cat and some of my stuff. When I came into my apartment, I noticed that someone had clearly been there while I was gone and made a mess of the place. They also took my computer apart and left me with an extra piece. For a while, I thought it was a chip, maybe with important information on it. It wasn't, but I never found out how it got there or who did it. Someone had broken in and turned every inch of my apartment upside down. And that is the chapter about the island. It was a fun experience, but yeah, there's more about that in the book. You can read what happened and everything and what led to it and more. But my new book, I Write the System to Fight the System, so I Might Write the System, is going to have a lot more of my backstory and about my transition and things, what led to it and what it was like to grow up, being intersex and trans and not knowing it quite yet. And but this one, the Godchild, is more about my mental illness and my psychotic break that I had, and what led to that, and where it went, and why I still haven't, been cured or whatever. Like I still have my beliefs. I mean, we all believe what we believe, and but yeah. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that chapter. You can get the Godchild a number of ways. You can get all three of the books. You can get them through Amazon, through me, or through the Armory out of the Blue Gallery. Me or the gallery has signed copies, and Amazon has faster shipping and everything like that. And also, if you buy it from Amazon, is the only way that it actually counts as a sale for me, like in the book counting sales. So that does me a favor. But really, honestly, whatever you want is whatever's easiest. I just want people to read it, and pass it around and talk about it, and so thanks for tuning in.